Nationals business. Now, this is something obviously that the Prime Minister wanted to avoid today because these are very delicate times, but he's made a choice that the Prime Minister would not only want to have been made, but also urged him to make effectively a week ago when he was so critical of Barnaby Joyce's conduct.
And it speaks volumes, I suppose, of the fact that Barnaby Joyce rang only the acting Prime Minister, Matthias Cormann, to inform him of his decision. Coupled with what you just said there, Andrew, what do we know and understand about the strains, or even, if we want to use the word, breakdown in the relationship between Malcolm Turnbull and Barnaby Joyce, a critical relationship at the very top of government?
A very critical relationship, and one that had broken down. There were efforts to fix it on the weekend, just before the Prime Minister left for Washington. There was that meeting in Sydney, but I think that you know, and we all know, that the breakdown of such a relationship takes a long time to heal. This is a relationship that has seen very close relations between the National leader and the Liberal leader, whether it be John Anderson and John Howard, or Tim Fischer and John Howard. We've had strong relationships. It's been key to the coalition. Now, it's even more important in a coalition government that only has a one-seat majority, and this is been the fear all along, that if you had some cataclysm inside the Nationals, it could cause all sorts of effects on the floor of the Parliament. This is the grand risk that this particular personal play had in a broader sense.
Right, so the Nationals are now going to have to go off on Monday and elect a new Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, Andrew, but also worth reflecting on the fact that sitting on the backbench now will be a former Prime Minister in Tony Abbott, a former Deputy Prime Minister in Barnaby Joyce. It's not too hard to imagine, is it, that both feel a sense of wounded pride as they sit there on the backbench. So the question, Andrew, is what does all this mean for stability in a government?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, if you've got disgruntlement so widespread on the backbench, then all sorts of trouble can be caused. Now, this will be a matter largely for the Nationals to control. They have a big decision that comes on Monday. They have to select a leader that can not only carry the authority that Barnaby Joyce lost in the last 2 weeks, but one who can also mend that relationship with the Liberal Party. Liberal Party and Nationals are in that delicate balance, as I said, and the government will certainly need every one of those 16 Nationals votes in the House of Reps.
Now, I know you're a long way from Australia and that you're there to do other things, namely to cover the Prime Minister's talks with President Trump. But from your knowledge from afar of the way the Nationals work, is it possible to speculate on a likely replacement? As we look at the camps, the groups, we won't use the word factions, we're talking about the National Party here, Andrew, but what sort of names are going to enter the frame?
Well, a few names immediately spring to mind. Of course, there's Michael McCormack. Now, he's being talked about as a likely candidate, a likely runner when it comes to that Monday contest. But then there might be a few other people who throw their names in the hat. Matt Canavan, for example, or David Littleproud. Now, David Littleproud has only just got into cabinet, of course, but he's actually impressed people inside Parliament with his performance at the dispatch box. He's a fiery character and he's quite eloquent on his feet. But then there's also talk of David Gillespie coming through the middle as a candidate who might be a clean skin, neither being an ally of Barnaby Joyce per se, but someone who's got an alliance to the party as in the broad. And this is the problem with any major upset such as this leadership business inside the Nationals, that it does cause a lot of bruising. And as we saw with Tony Abbott, those bruises take some time to dissipate.
All right, and just finally, Andrew Probyn, your actual purpose for being there, will there be a sense of frustration on the part of the travelling party? The job of governing goes on. This meeting, of course, goes ahead with President Trump tomorrow. Do you think that feeds into any sense of frustration on the part of the Prime Minister and the Liberal side of the coalition family?
Well, I think the frustration has actually been quite widespread for the last couple of weeks. This has caused enormous problems and disruption inside government. You could see that it went backwards in the polls, for example, and the polls are very important to the Prime Minister given the number that he put on Tony Abbott's, and he's fast approaching that number. So he will be glad, the Prime Minister will be glad that this is over, especially when it looked like it was going to greatly overshadow a very important meeting he's got in the building behind me, the White House. Donald Trump and he will be talking about all sorts of things, national security issues, defence issues and trade issues. This has got multi-pronged issues to be discussed, and we'll have a press conference tomorrow with the Prime Minister and the President, and I would imagine that the Prime Minister might also want to have another press conference before that, just so that he can clear the air when it comes to Barnaby Joyce. He wouldn't want his moment in the sun with the President to be embarrassed by questions of domestic politics.
I'm sure someone will be strategising that one as we speak, Andrew Probyn, but on what is a late night, and it looks like a cold night outside the White House, we're going to thank you and farewell you there from Washington, D.C.